You are not voting to stop recognising Interpol, Europol, and neither are you voting for SIS MI6 to stop dealing with other intelligence services in the fight against terrorism and global organised crime. Nor are you putting these sentences together in a way that I can take breath. I'm guilty of that all the time when I write things too. Right. It is very true. We are not voting to stop recognising Interpol, Europol, etc., etc. Again, my little mini rant, I am not voting out of the EU anyway, so this assumption that you are not voting to... Well, you're right, I'm not, because I'm not going that way. I dislike when things are framed in a very leading way. As I have said many times, it's a rant of mine, it's a pet hate. I probably do exactly the same sins myself when I'm trying to write a persuasive piece, but it still bugs me. Right, we are not voting in or out. We are not leaving these organisations is not what's on the table. It's a side effect of this vote. And the side effect really isn't that we would be leaving any of these organisations, because for the most part we wouldn't. We would still work with various international agencies. We would still have links to them. Pretty much, I imagine, the security situation in terms of who we work with would be the same, what things we would be still part of. There is, however, a flip side. We would not necessarily have the automatic and very speedy access to EU records, criminal records, EU intelligence, if we leave the EU. Now, this is in no small part due to the fact that you are allowed to keep information about EU citizens on EU systems. If we aren't in the EU, then we don't have EU systems. We aren't EU territory anymore in that respect, meaning that we may well have to request information. And when we don't have information automatically sort of at our fingertips, this could mean that there are people slip through our fingers. This could mean that it's going to take time to get information through that might be urgently important. It's one of those things. We do actually have border control, much as a lot of people like to bang on that we don't. We do have border control, and there's a vast amount of information that we can use pretty much instantly at our border checks that we might not have access to in the event of leaving the EU. We would distance ourselves from certain sources of information, certain intelligence agencies that are very useful for our security. This needs to be borne in mind, because in a best case scenario leaving the EU, possibly not a lot would change. But that's absolute best case. And it depends on what agreements might finally be drawn up post-exit. So absolute best case is we don't really damage our security situation much. Unfortunately, worst case is we really cannot work as rapidly in terms of security services as is needed in a day and age where really things happen very quickly. Criminal things happen very quickly. Terrorist attacks happen very quickly. If we are cutting ourselves off or distancing ourselves, again, best case, distancing ourselves from vital security information, we are leaving ourselves more open to potential attack or organised crime, to bad things. Just the big bundle of bad things that the hopefully predominantly good people deal with in the security services. We're not really sort of throwing the doors wide open and saying, hey, come and be bad here, but we are definitely putting ourselves at an elevated risk of some extent. How big or small, go and read, make your own minds up. But it's definitely not going to make our security situation better if we cut off or distance the information we need to be able to be secure.